Welcome to Good Service. We are your hosts, Ben Chung.
And Kevin Haw.
Each week, we'll be having real, raw, and vulnerable conversations about life, faith, and everything in between, and always over a fire meal.
Come grab a chair. Let's eat.
Folks, welcome back to Good Service. We are your hosts, Ben.
And Kevin.
And Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year. So excited for the pod for this year, and we're very excited for our guest today. Today, we have fashion designer, brand management, and developer.
Woo.
He's a recording artist and producer. He's the merch god and founder of Tears of Joy Company. We have young Lyxx in the pod.
Let's get
Welcome to the pod, Lyxx. Happy New Year, bro. We're doing something a little bit different today. So we normally break bread with our guests, and it just so happens that Kevin and I wanted to start the year off.
Sorry.
And this was not planned. Just starting the year off with the fast. Yeah. So I'm fasting today. Kevin's fasting today, but we still wanted to bless you with the meal,
yes,
man.
Sir. Yes, sir.
So today we're having Dickie's Barbecue Pit, their Gardena location, and today we have the Texas brisket sandwich combo. It has a Texas style brisket with their original barbecue sauce, pickles on the side, fries, and we wanted to bless you with that. So shout out to Dickie's Barbecue Pit.
Shout out to Dickie's.
So before we get into the food and conversation, we have a question that kind of prompts the convo to see kind of like where it takes off from there. And I was like, looking at some of the stuff you've been working on, some of the fashion stuff to the music stuff. I know that you kind of took a break from music for a bit, and then you were saying that you wanted to come back to that side of things. So of course, at the spirit of a new year, everything is always like, oh, what's the new thing? What's the new thing? And not just to like ride the new year hype, but when I was praying for you, like I felt like you're just straight up an artist and a creator. And I was like, oh, that like God, he's like creating a bunch of dope things. And then immediately I was like, God, you got a scripture for me? And then Genesis 1 came to mind. Genesis 1:1. It's just the first verse of the Bible. And it's very simple. Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's it. In the beginning, God created. And at the beginning of a new year, everybody wants to have a goal or a resolution or something that they want to be new. And I think there's something to be said with like, I want to stop doing this, or I want to do this more, or I want to, hit this milestone goal in my life. But I think without like a real foundational motivator, that goal is just an emotion, right? It's just like, I don't like the fact that last year looked like this, so emotionally I want this next year to look more like this. But we all know that emotions are temporary, right? Like they'll last for maybe a couple of weeks, and then once like the end of January rolls around, all the holiday hype kind of goes away, and then grind just kind of comes back. We can tend to fall back into our routine from last year that came probably the year before and even the year before that. And so I think the question for us is, now that we're at a new beginning, what is being created in your life? And I think what is being created and what you're creating can coexist. I think that's what co-creating means. Like when we co-create with God, it is we're relying on the creator who created us to partner with us in creating what we want. So in this new beginning of a new year, what is being created and what are you wanting to co-create with our creator? So just hold on to that before you answer the question. Okay. Like take a bite. We're gonna sip our water.
Yeah. I'm gonna cheers with the water.
We got our water jugs. So
tell us how good it is.
Yeah, give us
this is how we eat.
The play-by-play.
Guests, man.
Okay. Yeah, give us the play-by-play.
So this is our first meal with you.
Cheers, guys. Cheers.
Nice.
Let's get it. Solid. Fire.
How you feeling about it? Got adding some of those pickles in there.
I always judge a brisket by the softness, actually. So how
like
is
the tender,
the softness of it?
the pull apart?
It's pretty soft.
Oh, nice.
That's pretty good.
That's what's up.
Good texture, not fatty.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
How's that bun though? Because you got to have a
The
nice.
bun's nice.
Yeah, there we
Bun
go.
is super nice.
Shout out the Gardena location.
Yeah, Dickie's Barbecue Pit. Shout out.
Approve.
There you go. There you go. You know what? So I'll start it off. Because I didn't even really know how I was gonna frame that question. I just felt like this is the scripture that inspired it. He says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." So the first thing that God reveals about His character is that He's a creator, right? So He created in the very beginning, but the first things that He created was the heavens and the earth, which to me means foundation. Like everything that exists is founded upon this earth, right? Like the life that we live. If the earth wasn't here, we would have no foundation. And He separated the heavens from the earth. Mm-hmm. When you want to build anything, you have to have a firm and solid foundation first. There's also a scripture that says, like, don't build the house on the sand, like build it on the rock, because the sand, the wind and the waves will kind of, mess the foundation up, shake it up, and eventually the house will fall. Yeah. And so I think what sticks out to me in this new beginning of a year and what God is creating with me and inviting me into creating with Him is set your foundation up. And it's interesting. Yeah, I'm on a fast right now, but there was interesting. Someone commented on one of our last clips. Someone said, "You guys should fast on an episode." and I was like, "That's interesting."
We did it by
the very
accident.
next episode,
Yeah.
and it wasn't.
I did it with y'all.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But like someone suggested, I'm like, "Oh, interesting," because this episode we're fasting. But I think even coming into this, I wasn't planning like, "Oh, you know what I'm gonna do to start off good service? I'm gonna do a fast and then like announce it on the pod." Like I just so happened to be on this, and I feel like what God was telling me or kind of working through the last week of 2024 was, I think like God was really challenging me, like, how do you want to enter the next year? Like He was asking me a question, like, how do you want to enter the next year? And I'm like, God, well, yeah, I want this to change. I want that to change. And then, yesterday I was journaling, and I don't journal all the time, which I should, but like I journal maybe like 2-3 times a year max. Sometimes even once. And it's like when there's some sort of life altering event, like it's a new year, or I just broke up with somebody, or someone just passed away, or, those life changing moments. And I'm like, man, I need to be looking more at the day to day and see how God's moving. But I just so happened to open up my journal, and I just opened it up and I see where I landed. I'm like, oh, I landed in 2020. So I just read through all my journals from 2020 all the way till this year. And I realized there's things that I said every year that I'm like, I need to work on this. I need to do less of that. For the last now 5 years, I've been kind of saying the same thing. And I'm like, that hasn't changed much. So I told God, I was like, God, that needs to stop. All this, like, I need to work on this. I'm going to do less of that. I need to do more. Like, I'm like, I can't keep saying this stuff without actually making change. And so going into this new year, I wanted to start it off with like, I need to do something drastic that I've never done before, which is like, I'm going to do a fast. I'm going to do a 3-day, water only fast. And I'm not doing this in some sort of like performative, like, oh, look how holy or whatever. It's not about that. It's like, I need to, and Kevin and I were talking about this before we started rolling. Like, there are certain things that in order for that to change, we need to be like violent about it. And what I mean by violent is not like, being angry and raging, but I'm talking about like drastic. We need to be hyper vigilant. And so I was like, God, I need to go into this year denying my flesh, because I want this year to be a full surrender of all the things in my flesh that I've been recording for the past 5 years that hasn't even changed, but this is the year that it's got to change. And I'm not even talking about, Lord, let's do less of that. Let me work on that. I'm saying, let's kill that. Let's cut that one out completely.
Yeah.
And that's something where I feel like the foundation that God is setting for me in this year is, you know, like we can have a list of 10 things you want to do. Like, forget 10 things. You're probably going to forget like the latter half of that. Like, focus on like one thing, maybe two things, you know? So I think for me, man, like what I really want to see created in this year is like an extreme obedience to what God's been telling me for years. You know what I mean? I want to see a creation of that level of extreme obedience. And I feel like God's been like really like, not like pestering me in an annoying way, but really like not letting this go with me for the past, like throughout the last year, like literally January of 2024 till now. I'm like, this thing hasn't left me. And I'm like, God, I'm done giving you the runaround. I'm done like saying, oh Lord, I'm trying. Oh Lord, but I'm making a little bit of progress here. Dude, it says in Romans, I believe it's Romans chapter 13. It says, make no provision for sin. And what that, I was hanging out with the homie of mine. And he was like, when I see that passage, that makes me feel like if I know I struggle with this, but I'm still going to kind of like be near it, that's like me setting a table for sin. Like, here, come sit at the table. I'm gonna invite you into my space and dine with you. And if I'm even thinking deeper than that, I'm like, man, when you do that, you're setting a seat for the enemy to sit across from you, and you're hoping that you don't get burned or you don't get drawn into what the enemy's really trying to do, which is trying to kill you. And so when it says make no provision for sin, that means don't even let it near your vicinity. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So that's something for me where I'm like, all right, Lord, that's the foundation that I feel like I need to set. Like, deny my flesh, start the year off. We're not eating for 3 days, you know, and really go deep. And I'm really excited. I'm only on my second day, but already I'm feeling that there is a clarity. Like I went for like a walk this morning and like a light jog, because you're not supposed to, you know, do too much when you're on a water fast. But like, I was like, yo, let me just like be outside and just kind of like walk and enjoy nature and talk with God. And I really feel like he was like, you're doing it right. And this is where I want you. And I almost feel like he's like, man, wait till you see what's on the other side of this obedience. Like, you have no idea because you haven't done it yet. You know what I mean? So I feel like that is what God is creating with me, is that foundation of extreme obedience.
That's good.
Yeah, that was deep.
It's that fast talk, bro.
Yeah.
We all love a good cup of Joe in the morning. I'm having my cup of coffee before we record every episode of Good Service. So we're proud to announce our episode sponsor, Lucky Bison Coffee, created by my good friend Nat Long. Nat is a Jesus-loving man who started roasting premium coffee beans during the pandemic and started sending it to his friends. And what started out as a pandemic passion actually turned into his business. Every subscription of Lucky Bison Coffee, you'll receive a rotating selection of tasty coffee, either weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. And if you are a decaf person, it's all good. Nat's got you. Just specify that when you sign up. And each bag of coffee comes with a little hand-drawn zine of brewing instructions that Nat actually draws himself. So log on to LuckyBisonCoffee.com, and listeners of the podcast will get 25% off their first month subscription. Just enter that code at checkout and get into Nat's Secret Coffee Club. I'm in there. Hope you get in there. Thank you so much, stewards. We love you guys. Peace.
What about you, Lennix? You were about to say something.
I was just going to say, like, for me this year, I just kind of want to double down on the things I've been doing. Like you said, just be more obedient, more purposeful in what I'm doing, and not just doing things because I know I can. Really, like, setting out a real plan for myself this year to kind of take things to the next level. I feel like I've always grown things to a certain height, but never to its peak.
Mm.
So I really want to take it all the way up a notch this year.
Dang. Do you think getting to that peak, when you mentioned that, do you think that's something that like again, because we talked about co-creating with God, like what does that look like, trying to like reach a new level, knowing like who God is and like where you are with it? Like what does that look like?
I mean, like he said, I mean, it's just really cutting out all the distractions, all the sins. I feel like you kind of have to sacrifice certain things to get to where you're trying to go. And that could be the difference of us not making it to certain places.
Right.
You know,
Wow,
I
yeah,
think
that's
God will allow us to recognize like our talents, but we never know like how far it can really go. Right. Until we really like put that time in with God and really let him guide us through it. Through the journey.
Okay, that's good. I think this year, when you pose the question of, you know, co-creating and creating with God, what is God creating? I think I saw a lot of, I felt that there's a lot of things ending last year. It just felt, I felt a lot of it. But it felt like that for a while now for me, to be honest. But as I was seeing like projects come and go, and just who I am and where I'm sitting with, the things that I was doing started more emphasizing towards the people. I think, you know, we talked about this. It's like people started getting like more important. Like it wasn't just about like, oh, this project needs to be A+ or whatever, but it's more like who am I really walking with right now, and how am I doing that? I think before, like I don't even know how, or I would decide, but basically like whatever the world tells you, success, this, that, or whatever, you start like gathering that network and start building, because, you know, they say the top or the 5 people that you hang out with influence you, things like that. And, you know, that's how you like build each other up. But then all these frameworks that I learned in the past was around like myself and the world, to be honest. Like that's just me very honest about it. But after sitting with the Lord and having an actual relationship, not just head knowledge, not just wisdom or even like the reading smarts of what scripture says, but it's more of like actually sitting with God and like really building a relationship. What God started creating in me, before he could create, he had to undo so much, right? But as he was doing that, in this coming year, there's all this newfound excitement. Because it's been, I think, 2 years now where I didn't really know what I was building, I guess. Like I was just kind of doing what was in front of me and doing what God would bring, focusing on relationships, just trusting in the process. But now it's like he's almost saying, hey, I think I want to show you what to create now. Yeah. Like it's starting to like happen. I don't know what it is yet, like, because it's like what, day 2 or like whatever into the month that we're in. Like we're only a few days into the year, so I'm kind of like, okay, I don't know yet. But as he's kind of fleshing it out, like there's this newfound excitement in me that I haven't felt in like a while.
At least it's on your mind to recognize.
Yes. No, right.
It's only day 2.
Yeah. So
I mean, I feel like that's important.
Yeah. It's definitely on the mind, and it's really interesting because it's like, I think before it was more like, not that I didn't care what I was doing. It was more like whatever happens, I'm good with it is how I felt. So it's kind of like I'm accepting of my circumstance and I'm satisfied. That's where I was at. But now it's like, no, something's coming, and I'm excited for it. It's a little different posture this year.
You feel it.
I feel it. I do. And I'm like, man, what is that? But I am curious.
Yeah.
I am curious.
I mean, we can't step into, like, for instance, like the concept of like a seed, right? A seed needs to be broken in the soil for there to be fruit, right? And so like the shell of the seed, if the seed stays in the shell, there is no fruit, because it's just in the casing, right? And like when a seed is broken, that's where a tree can sprout, fruit can sprout.
Bro.
So I feel like that the undoing of what you're talking about, we need to undo and like sort of take off that shell.
Yeah, wow.
In order for that new thing to happen.
Dang.
You know, so I was thinking about like so coming into this pod today, I knew Lennix was coming through, and my only interaction with you was early last year when we went to DesignerCon. That was last year, right?
Was that last year?
2024.
No.
Now.
Or I feel like didn't we go to like licensing or something? We went.
Oh, I mean, licensing expo.
Yeah, we went to we went to
not
Vegas
DeCon.
together.
Licensing expo.
Yeah,
Yep.
went to
What
Vegas.
month was that?
That was
Summer.
Summer.
I think it was summer.
Oh, was it summer? Okay.
Yeah. Summer.
So I was like, okay. So I met you for the first time there, and I mean, we didn't interact a whole lot, and then I knew you guys were working together. I knew you were really talented and all that. And I don't say this in any kind of offense, but it didn't strike me that you were a believer. Like I just didn't know that like you love God. And so when Kevin was like, "Yo, yeah, let's get Lennix on the pod," I was like, "Oh shoot, he's a believer." He's like, "Yeah," and like not to cast judgment or like whatever, but like because people think that about me too. They're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't know Ben was Christian," and so I'd love to tap in on that part. I mean, however you want to like get. I mean, we don't need to go full on testimony mode, but I mean, if you would like to, that's cool too. But like, how has that journey been? Especially as a fashion designer and a recording artist, like in the entertainment space, like you have a lot of like front facing. You could just look like another one of those industry guys, and I don't say that in offense, like just what it could look like. So I'd love to hear like that part of your story as far as
break that mold, bro.
Yeah, like just like how that all kind of came to and where you're at today.
For me, like I think what makes people think that I would look like that, just because I don't like broadcast it. I think a lot of people think of that idea and only see it kind of like one dimensional. I feel like even in the industry, a lot of my friends that are big rappers and big, entertainers are also big believers, So I think it's just not broadcasted, or it might not just look a certain way, so people would assume. But I mean, I grew up in the church. My uncle was a pastor. My aunt was the head of the choir. I was in the choir.
Yeah.
So my family's from the South, so church has always been like a big thing. I mean, having faith, praying, having a relationship with God, talking to God on a daily, praying, giving thanks, and just being one with your spirit has always been in my life and in my journey. But I guess some might not know it because it's just not televised. But I also feel like your relationship with God doesn't need to be on Front Street all the time. I feel like it's your personal, your personal relationship. It's like having a girlfriend. Some people might post their relationships and you'll know that they're in a relationship, and then some people might not. But that doesn't make one relationship better than the other. Yeah. They still exist. It's just, on your personal, how you communicate.
Right.
Yeah. How do you think some of that translated into, I guess, some of the things that you do today? You mentioned choir. I remember you mentioned that to me before. I don't even know how long you did it or what exactly that looks like. What does it look like to be in choir for you growing up? Because I personally have never been in choir. So like, I just want to know. And I know you're in music, so I want to know if that influenced you and like, how did that look like?
I mean, growing up when I was younger, we lived in the South. So there's like, Baptist church, obviously. And, we got to go to choir practice. We got to learn the songs.
Yeah. Okay.
Some people have solos. I had a solo one time.
Hey.
I was super nervous. But I think that was like my first kind of introduction to performing.
I see.
But it was always fun. And then having family there and we're all sharing this spirit together, I think it kind of just brought us tighter. Yeah. But as far as me moving in the industry, I mean, it gives me morale. Like, I'm a human first, and I know that. So I always think of things like, like God's watching me at the end of the day. So I don't want to make a move that's necessarily out of, what I believe in.
Yeah.
You know, so I know I'm flesh and I'm not perfect, and there are things that I do that probably could go against what God will want me to do. And you know, we're all kind of working on ourselves to become better and closer with God, but at the end of the day, I know in my heart of heart, my moves are gonna be, you know, I'm not gonna do anything that's just outside of my morals and what I do. And I feel like the people that move like that, that's the whole concept of like selling your soul, because you're doing something against what you believe in for a price, whether that's fame, whether that's money. And I think that also has a lot to do with my slow progress in my journey, because I wasn't willing to compromise that in a lot of instances when I was, you know, faced with certain opportunities doing music.
Right.
So, I mean, my faith definitely plays into a fact there. And, you know, I always pray that God just guides me where he wants me to be. So that way I know that I'm not doing anything wrong or doing anything outside of his path for me. So I just keep that faith that he's keeping me on the right journey.
Yeah, you said that, you know, as people who follow Jesus and who walk with the Lord, we don't always have to put our faith or our relationship out on Front Street or out in the public or, you know, in all of our messaging. And I totally agree with that. I wonder though, you know, for you being a believer in that industry where people may just kind of typecast you as, oh yeah, he's just like this, whatever. What are some ways that, or have you felt called or challenged in ways where you do want to be vocal? I mean, it doesn't have to be on a social media post, but like conversations that happen, you know, behind the scenes, to relationships that you have with people, because I'm sure, you know, you're going to be around a lot of different people walking all different, you know, walks of life. And, you know, as followers of Jesus, like, you know, I mean, we're definitely called to let our light shine, right? It says, don't put your lamp under a lampstand, like let it shine, right? And I think there's ways to let it shine. Again, it doesn't have to be all like every single social media post I got to talk about how Jesus, whatever. But like how, I guess like how does it look like for you to shine in your own way in that industry?
I mean, for one, I've thanked God publicly for certain accomplishments that I've had in this industry on public platforms. When I have conversations with my friends, and I have friends that are all different religions. For me, it doesn't matter what religion, it just matters to me that you have some type of faith, because then I understand that you have purpose. So I've had those conversations with my friends. But I think for me, the biggest thing is just, because there's people that I know that get online and say this all day, and I don't feel like they really walk by that. So to me, like, it doesn't make it better to jump online and just do that. I think it shows in how you move and your character, and really like understanding, like, you know, God wants you to do these things, not these things. So when you're put to the test of doing it, what do your actions show? Right. So for me, I think that shows through me in this industry. If you ask anybody about any type of dealings that they've had with me overall, people are going to say they felt good working with me. They felt it was fair. They felt, you know, I wasn't out to screw them over, even in situations where I could have. I never even think like that. I'm always trying to help people get up, because I feel like at the end of the day, there's room for everyone. And I feel like that is God shining his light through me and my actions, not necessarily like what I say. Because I feel like we're in an industry where a lot of people say a lot of things. So you kind of got to just go off their actions, and I think that's the way. But yeah, me and my friends have these conversations when the lights are off. I've said things publicly to let people know I do have a belief. And even me doing things like this, I didn't do this podcast just because Kevin invited me. because I get invited to
by
do
the
a
way.
lot of different. I mean, I get invited to do a lot of podcasts, but I don't get on every podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
Because if it doesn't align with my brand, then I'm not gonna do it. And I feel like this is on brand for me. That's why I made the conscious decision to say yes, of course. I'll definitely want to do this.
One thing I'll say is me and Lennix, we've known each other for maybe like, I would say 4 years now. We've been a lot tighter in the last year, and it's been really great to see exactly, I will say as a witness, to see the actions speak louder than words. I really do. I want to like pause there to like double down on some of the things he said, because I think there's a lot of folks, you know, that watch the show that definitely they're in all sorts of industry, right? Whether it's in corporate, so you got to like act a part in a suit and tie, the 9 to 5, or like us, where we're trying to like build businesses, do different things, and we're industry adjacent, meaning like music or talent or entertainment or whatnot. And what's tough is that I think a good place to be for me, and I'll just use myself as an example, is that I was really scared to talk about God on a public platform. That's just real, because even though I had my personal relationship with God, I was so scared what would happen if we started this podcast, to be honest.
Why?
Because I was scared, because I was hoping that my actions followed all my words that I speak.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Because I knew that now that I'm in a public platform,
People are gonna hold you to a certain.
exactly.
Yeah.
So like I was thinking like, because I'm still not perfect, I'm still human, I'm gonna slip up,
And that's what people need
you know
to
what I
see.
mean?
People don't need to see. I feel like when people look at pastors
Yeah.
and they do something that's
Sure.
of the flesh, they feel so defeated because they just put them on this plateau. But at the end of the day, it's like no one's perfect.
That's
Everyone's
good.
gonna make mistakes. So I feel like the fact that you guys are creating this space where people can identify with
That's
it more.
right. Yep.
People can't really identify with a pastor. They're gonna feel like, oh, I want to hide my actions around this person because
Yeah.
I see them a certain way,
Right.
not knowing that person, a pastor could have been an alcoholic before. They could have
Sure.
been a drug user before,
Yeah.
and they could have changed.
Yeah.
So, but if they don't know that, they're gonna just look at them. But I feel like in this platform, in this space, with us three being in the industries
Right.
we're in
Yeah.
and having these conversations, it opens it up. And to piggyback on what you were saying, this is a way for me to kind of like get that out there
That's right.
to people, to let them know like,
Yeah.
we're having these conversations too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's good.
I love this because I totally agree. I the fear that I had starting something where
Yeah.
being very vocal about your faith, it's like now it's out there and now people are watching and now
Sure.
people are listening. And I think there's kind of two ways to look at that. There's the one way of like, I don't want people to look at me because, and if even with that, like, let's just say if that was something that I felt, I don't want people to look at my life like that.
Sure.
I would ask myself, why? Are you living in such a way that you want to hide? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
I want to
that's
be able
right.
to do things and mess up without anybody calling me out. Is that what I'm afraid of?
Yeah.
And legit, and I think that's where even what my first bite reflection question or the answer was, I feel like God is saying, I'm calling you to a different type of obedience. That doesn't mean you're perfect, and that doesn't mean you're better than anybody. But consecration is set yourself apart from the way that the world is, so that we are God's chosen people. We are his people. We are supposed to look and live different. We may not necessarily have to dress different or any of the physical appearance type stuff, but our lives are supposed to look different. So if I'm going to really be like, man, I don't want to put out a Christian, focused thing, because now people are gonna be like, Ben's out there. Let's put a bullseye on his back and let's wait for him to fall. Because if that's actually the case, if people are actually putting a bullseye on you, that's not on you. That's on them.
Yeah, they're gonna do that anyway,
And-
even if you didn't do this podcast.
And we've gotten super vulnerable on this podcast. I've talked about my battles with alcohol and all the things on this. I'm like, look, And I'm not glorifying like, yeah, we could do this and it's all good. I'm like, look, I'm a person who's broken, who is in need of Jesus every single day, moment of my life. Yeah. And without Jesus, I can't do this. Yeah. But with Jesus, we can, you know. And so I think that's also something that, you know, we are all imperfect. We all have our flesh and we struggle. But I think it's important. It's absolutely critical for us to not like embrace our fallen and brokenness. It's like, yeah, we're all like this. Because I think that's where the enemy would have you like stay and be like, yeah, everyone's broken, bro. Just stay broken. Like, but Jesus is like, no, I came here to heal your brokenness. Yeah. And if you lean into that and we walk and we journey in that, and it's still not going to be perfect, but we're not here to embrace our imperfection. You know, we're here like let the Lord sanctify. Sanctification is an ongoing thing that will happen until the day that we die or until the day that we're with Jesus. But it is a constant like refinement, and that refinement comes with like wrestling with and repenting, and when we fall, getting back up and getting back towards that direction. And like I think it's very dangerous, and I'm not saying that this is what we're saying here, but it's dangerous to have this sort of like lax Christianity, like Jesus loves us, we're all broken, like nobody's perfect, let's all just kumbaya in that. Yeah, that's fine. But it's like, no, that's not what Jesus came here to die for us, for us to just chill out like that. And I think that's where like, yes, it's still like, bro, I mean, all this stuff it goes out into the public, and I'm getting people shooting me DMs. They're like, "Oh man, I listened to that last podcast. I'm praying for you in this way or that," and I appreciate that. You know what I mean? And like, because there's certain episodes that go out, I'm like, damn, I don't know if I should have said that, bro. You know what I mean? But it's like, that's real. Look, I don't fear the judgment of man. I fear the Lord's judgment, and thank God that He's not somebody who judges me as He judges a non-believer. He judges me as a son. He disciplines me as a son. So there is a level of judgment and discipline there, but it's not condemning. God's not looking at me. He's like, Ben, you've been sinning too much. I don't know if that salvation thing's for you anymore. I might take that back. That's not what God does. You know what I mean?
Love is unconditional.
Yeah. What's up, stewards? So people have been asking us how they can support the podcast, and the best way for you guys to support us is by joining our Patreon. As a subscriber, you're going to get exclusive content such as Q&As, bonus interviews, hot takes, vlogs, and so much more. This show is a labor of love, and we do have financial needs to keep the podcast going. So if you would like to join our Patreon, log on to patreon.com/goodservicepodcast and join our community today. We love and appreciate you so much, stewards. Thank you so much.
I'd love to know, you know how, because you moved around a couple of times in your life, and when you came to LA, you know, it was really to start more like focus on the profession. And then there was like, and now it's kind of like also evolved into like two things. As you came here, how did that all like I guess the reason why I'm asking this, because there's so many people that come to LA to start their careers, which whether it's entertainment based or not, they still come over here trying to get in with the, you know, big brands or big city or network or whatever it is. And there's a lot of folks that come in. How did you find the best ways for you to stay grounded within all the lights? And I'm sure some years it was harder, but what's some of the, I guess I'm just trying to highlight the moments of, man, I think this is what kept me grounded, and maybe some of the folks could learn something from that.
The thing that kept me grounded for sure, I mean, my family for sure. You know, the things that they instilled in me off of rip just kept me grounded when I came here. But while I'm here, I would say probably my circle, choosing the right people to really have around me. I think that keeps me grounded, and having people that, you know, I really trust and believe in, and we kind of are like-minded in a way. Because I feel like, I don't know, I feel LA has two different sides to it. I mean, you have your people that grew up here, and that side of, I don't really say, I'm not really talking about that LA. I'm talking about the Hollywood LA where all the transplants come from everywhere.
Yes.
And everyone kind of treats this as disposable in a sense. I feel like a lot of these relationships in this industry are, you know, what can you do for me? What have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
My friends were, you know, I can lean on them.
Yeah.
And I keep those type of people around me, and they can lean on me. And I think that's kept me grounded.
Yeah.
And not really like allowing myself to lose myself in this. And you know, when you have friends like that, they're gonna hold you accountable too. Like when you're doing things that are off track, they'll reel you back in to tell you like, hey, that's not it.
Yeah.
So I think keeping your core circle tight here is key.
Wow. I think that was a really powerful word about disposable. Actually, I haven't heard that in a while, where there could be folks, and I'm sure there are many folks that come into the city and they think relationships are disposable. And that is such a powerful thing to say out loud, because there's a lot of, like, unfortunately, like, I don't get to see too much of it because we're from LA. You're right, there's two sides. When you're like born and raised in the area, you have like your own like tight-knit people that's been here with you, you know, so it's a little different. But definitely in the transplant of like all these folks that do come in, I could see why I've met folks where they're like, this is like the first community I've met in like 4 years or 5 years, because they've just been struggling with finding those good people. And it's probably because exactly what you just said, where they're so hyper focused on whatever success or fame or whatever they're trying to attain, they treat it as disposable. And I'll tell you, human beings are not disposable.
No, that's the truth.
Dude,
Yeah, I mean,
strong.
when I think about, I love that you are able to distinguish the, like, I'm not saying every transplant is thinking that every relationship is a disposable or transactional type of thing. But like folks like myself and Kevin who are from here that, you know, people ask me all the time, they're like, yo, like, are you from like San Diego or are you from the Bay? Or I'm like, no, I'm from LA. They're like, what? You're not like most LA folks. I'm like, well, who are you hanging out with?
Who are you hanging out with?
You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, what do you mean by that? They're like, yes, you're like down to earth and you're like real. And I'm like, yeah, like most folks that are from here are like the most chill and like type of whatever.
I like that.
But you know, but we're also in the entertainment industry though too. So us sort of not being that stereotypical, oh, you're Hollywood and blah blah blah, like we're not like that, yet we still operate in that industry where it is that industry. So like I think that's such a great opportunity for us to be lights in this industry, because we're cut from a different cloth. I mean, well, technically, wait, you're from San Diego? Born and raised over there? Okay. So like, you know, we're like in that space, yet kind of cut from a cloth that people may not have, you know, that may not think about that. Like what a great opportunity for us to be that light, to show up with excellent work, you know, being people of integrity and being of high character, but yet like caring about people versus like it's all about the bottom line and it's all about the product that we can put out together. And I think that's the way that I feel to be Christ-like, is to be that. Like Jesus like showed up in ways where he was a carpenter and, you know, he fed people. He like loved on people first. And I would imagine the way that Jesus would show up was he would show up with his best. And whether that his best looked impressive to people or not, that's up, you know, that's subjective, but it was the way he showed up that caught the attention of people, right? Like when he approached like Peter, like he was looking at, okay, this guy's a fisherman. Let me help you fish. Like you didn't catch anything all night, right? All right, well, cast your net over here. And Peter, like, who is this guy? Like I'm the professional fisherman over here. This guy, okay, like I've been out here all night. I didn't catch anything. Jesus like tossed it on this side of the boat and then caught all this fish. And then Peter's like, who is this guy? Like this guy knows something that I don't know. You know, so there's a part of that like showing up in a way like I know what I'm doing. You know, I'm good at what I do, but like there's something deeper than that. you know? And I think that's where Jesus was able to get people to just follow him, not because he like brainwashed or just like, you know, cast a spell on them and like, okay, I'm just going to follow you. Like, you see how I am, you see how I show up. Like, do you think there's something deeper than what you're seeing as to like why I think you should follow me? And I think that is such a great testament for people like yourself and like, yeah, even us, like being able to be in these spaces. And I, you know, before us doing this podcast, I think people would probably know that we were believers because like, you know, we would talk about it in our, you know, interactions with people. But to be very public and like front facing with it, yeah, it is like a risk, so to speak. We've talked about this. Like, we've had people like unfollow us and stuff like that. You know,
why do you think that is?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, maybe because the content is a little bit too like, oh, like y'all are talking specifically about this religion. Like we, you know, I think the ways of the world is very like all religions, right? Like the universe, and you know, all religions kind of say the same thing. So let's embrace all. Let's not just say that there's one way, you know. And I think that is a very worldly way of like being spiritual. But I think when we say Jesus and we say this is the only way, like that can make people feel like, yo, I don't know about that. That's not all inclusive.
I think it also depends. I think for me, I think it was a little bit of that, meaning, you know, because we definitely live in a more, I guess, liberal, forward-thinking type of state compared to, you know, because this is very based on U.S., by the way. The world doesn't think this way, but just the U.S., we're divided into a couple thought camps, right? And I guess where we live in SoCal, it could be seen as like, oh, like because you're someone that loves God, I'm going to put you in this political atmosphere of everything against, you know, what Christians on the political sphere thinks, right? Which could be like negative towards like,
for sure,
whether it's you know, race, other religions, whatever it could be, right? There's a little bit of that, but there's also I've also received some interesting conversations, DMs, and things like that people that, you know, profess that they love Jesus, yet they're like, oh, you're not like Christian enough. Like you're too chill and too accepting, and like, because I was very open about like, even like we have a Bible study and like they'll ask who can come, like anybody, like anyone that has interest. Like, oh wait, but like, what if you're like Muslim? I'm like, that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's just more about, it's not that I'm saying like, oh, like we all have to like immediately agree, but it's a process. So it's like, I still want to invite you over, break bread with you, hang out with you. Why don't we get to know each other as people first, and then like, then you could decide. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. So there's definitely people on both spectrum.
But I think maybe to help that, the message should be more open to everyone, because I think when you are just like, yeah, you might believe in only Jesus, but I wouldn't push away a person that is Muslim, because at the end of the day, we still believe in a higher power that's for the good of God, God, whether it's, you know, whatever you would call him in your religion. So I think like that way of thinking isn't necessarily bad, because it's still aligning people with similar ideas to get on the same page. You know, I don't think we'll have one universal religion, but as long as someone believes in something, I think at least we're on the right path.
Well, I mean, I think, you know, we all acknowledge that there has been a journey that all of us have been on. You know, like whether we grew up in a household that was culturally this way or that, that may be our starting point, and you know, we're still here. That means the journey's not done, and the discovery process with like what God, the God of the universe, like what he's speaking to you, if we're still here, that means he's not done, you know. And so I think I totally agree, you know, whether you claim to be this religion or that, or a straight up atheist that you don't believe in God, cool, all are welcome, because we're still journeying. And if you're still alive, that means there's still more road for you to figure out where this is all going. And so I mean, yeah, that's what I mean. This this show has always been about real, honest conversations. It's not like real, honest conversations with this group of people.
Yeah.
It's like with anybody who's
Open.
willing to talk and discuss. But like also the invitation is like, let's go deeper. Let's go deeper than what we all feel like. Oh yeah, as long as we're all spiritual and morally good, everything's chill. Like, okay, let's go a layer deeper than that. You know what I'm saying? I think that's kind of where I personally feel convicted, because it's always been in that layer deeper where I found and discovered like, wait, I don't really know if I'm there in that way, and like what's holding me back.
It's true.
You know what I mean? Or like, what am I not coming into agreement with? And even in those times, it's not like someone's pressuring me like, yo, unless you do this, like you're not really this. You know, I'm like, yo, like give me some space to figure it out. And God's been gracious in my life for decades of me figuring it out. And I'm still figuring it out. At the top of this new year, I'm like, all right, Lord, I think you just said something else to me that like you're like an invitation to go a layer deeper. And I'm like, all right, Lord, by your grace, I'll say yes, you know? So I think it's great to like, you know, identify where we've been, and like even going back to the question of like where we're at now, what are we creating that's going into something new?
I actually have a question. So, I love what you said, Lennix. How did that change for you? Because and there must have been a moment, or maybe you were always this way, because for me, to be very honest, I wasn't, right? Because I was raised in my Presbyterian church unit, and what happens, right? Naturally, you're like, yo, that's not right. I'm right. You're wrong. Like you start doing that. Like it's just natural. And I remember even up to even a few years ago, I feel like I wasn't very open with tons of people, because I had all this head knowledge, and I thought like, oh, I have to be right, you're wrong. But once I had a relationship with God, it all changed. Like it just, everything became much more open and accepting. So what was that moment for you? Because you grew up in the church. There must have been a moment where you're just like, wait a minute, how do I, like, there's something deeper than what I'm thinking. Because a Baptist church, I know how Baptist churches are. So where did that, you know what I mean? There must have been a moment.
I feel like, honestly, I've always been like that. Like, I always been like that. My mom is Catholic. My dad's Baptist. So even growing up, we would go to 2 different churches. Oh. Just to see, like, you know, just to probably expose me to both. But, I mean, I've always just had that faith, honestly. Like, I don't think it was a moment where I didn't, and then the light turned on. I kind of always have been taught that growing up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. They still go to 2 different churches? Just curious.
Nah, they don't. They go to one now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Which one do they go to now?
The Baptist one.
Okay.
That's cool.
Just curious.
That's cool.
Word.
Hey stewards, we all need prayer, so we're excited to announce our partnership with Seedling. Seedling is an online platform for churches, content creators, and different ministries to connect to their communities through the power of prayer. There'll be real people on the other side, like myself and Ben. We're also logged on. We'll be there to intercede for you through voice and through text. Please log on to seedling.so so we can get connected through prayer. Thank you, guys. Hey, real quick, before we switch, this is a completely off-topic thing. I just want to ask, because Lyxx is in the merch space, so I have to ask this. There's a lot of faith-based merch coming out lately. Yeah. I just want to know what your thoughts and take is on it. I'm curious because we have a friend. I've introduced Lennix over here to him, and they met. But just curious, what do you think about the space? It is different today than it ever was. How do you feel about the whole thing?
I like it. I mean, going back to growing up, like my favorite player was Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson used to wear the WWJD bands. I bought every color.
Hey, shout out, man.
I literally had everyone growing up. I literally still have some.
Wow.
But that was cool. Like, he made that cool. Even for people that didn't necessarily believe in it, they still was representing it. So I think going back to that, I think it's good that it's cool now. Because even though there's people that might not believe in it, they still might rock it, and it's what it represents. And I would rather 1,000 people be wearing something that represents that than some devilish thing, you know. So I think it's cool that it's in the space. I think it's time for that.
So your brand, Tears of Joy. Can you talk a little bit about that brand and like the origins of it, the inspiration behind it?
So I was making brands for other people. I started my own brand called Have a Safe Fun Weekend, which was more just like streetwear and stuff like that. And then me and my friend Hugo, we kind of came together, and I was just venting to him how I wanted to start a cut and sew brand. And we was just kind of thinking of, you know, different ideas and stuff like that. And he threw out the name Tears of Joy. And I was like, you know, that's dope. And it also has meaning to the journey, because it's like there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into this. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And I feel like anytime anytime you've been through something where you've had that journey that makes what you're working towards more appreciated, when you get there, I think everyone has that tear of joy that comes down their face. So I think that was kind of like the idea behind it. And we did go through a lot with this brand. So I feel like to finally have it at a place where it's in full control of us and our vision, and not really letting the outside things affect it, it feels good. So
that's great, man.
Yeah.
Dope.
That's awesome.
Well, Lennix, we call this show Good Service. We love to frequent these restaurants that provide good food, good service, which ultimately creates a great experience for us to keep coming back. Shout out to Dickie's Barbecue Pit in Gardena for the fire barbecue today.
Yeah, fire.
But good service can mean different things to different people. The word good and the word service. What does good service mean to you, Lyxx?
I think maybe the experience of how someone feels. I think that's good service. If you go to a restaurant and you have good service, it's really not even necessarily about the food. It's just about how that waiter made you feel. So I think it's all feeling.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Dude, Lyxx, thank you for joining us today, man.
Appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, appreciate just the honesty and realness, and just where you're at in your journey and your willingness to just tell your story in a real and authentic way. What is a way that we here or our listening audience could serve you in this coming year?
Just keep me in your prayers.
Yeah,
just keep me in your prayers, man. Pray that I just stay on the right path that God has set out for me. And I pray that by me opening new doors of opportunity, it opens opportunities for others.
that's great.
Dope.
That's awesome.
What is a way that people can follow the journey, whether that's social media, website?
Any socials, just hit me up. My personal page is YOUNGLYXX. Just hit me up. I always respond to my DMs. And then in my bio, you'll see my other businesses and stuff like that if you want to check that out. But yeah, just hit me up on all platforms, same social.
That's what's up. That's
Sweet.
what's up, dude. Thank you so much. Folks, stewards, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Good Service. We'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace. We out. Stewards, thank you so much for supporting Good Service. People have been asking us how you can support the pod. We have a Patreon.
Yes, if you guys go on there, there's additional content. We're going to be doing Q&As, different announcements, and other types of special things just for our tight community. So thank you guys for supporting us on Patreon.
Please subscribe. We love you guys. Peace,
Jeez.
stewards.